My parents raised me in the religion that they belonged to, and so I was raised as in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. That was a big part of my childhood, and I think it really shaped who I am today. We have 3 amazing children, all assigned male at birth. We raised them for the most part in Chandler, and it was about junior year that we noticed our middle child was struggling. We didn't quite know what it was, but at first maybe just typical teenager stuff. But as time went on, we noticed there was something that was more deep, and that was very concerning. And as a parent, I would check, just monitor them and check text messages from time to time. And I read an email that just said, I really want to be a girl, and explained a little bit more of that. And that's how, when my husband and I learned what was really going on. It was really shocking. I didn't understand it. There wasn't an explanation about gender dysphoria, or even the word transgender wasn't used. It wasn't anything that explained. It was just, for a long time, I wanted to be a girl. I want to be a girl so bad. And I told my husband about it. He didn't really understand it either. And so we visited a counselor to get some direction, helping us to understand this just isn't something that was chosen, that this isn't something that could just go away, and that we needed to focus on the relationship and keeping the lines of communication open. And so we found a time when we could just sit down and talk and explain that we knew what they're struggling with, and that we loved, unconditionally, we loved them, and that we were going to be by their side. And that was very basic, but that was the gist of the conversation. And then later, they told us that they wanted to transition. They wanted to start living as the identity that was authentic to them, that they were. And so, as a parent who naturally wants to protect their kids, I'm thinking about all of these other things as well. Being that it was the senior year, and graduation coming, and grandparents coming for graduation, and I thought it would be easier just to wait till graduation's over and then transition and then start college fresh. And that's what they agreed to do, hesitantly, but agreed. But a few months later, this child went to my husband and was just really sad about having to wait. And really what it came down to was, if they had graduated, not having transitioned, nobody in high school would know who they really are. And it was important that to this child that people in school knew who they really were. And so that's when we decided, okay, it's we understand, you go for it, but give us a little bit of time to explain to family. And I helped them to understand, and I shared them my experiences and what I had been learning. And so when this child did come out as Chloe on Facebook, saying, "This is who I am," the response from family was really wonderful, to the point where, an aunt bought a necklace with a C on it and mailed it to her. A grandpa sent a card, just say, "Chloe, so happy to have you part of our family." I mean, it was unbelievable. It was family that we didn't think would respond positively did. And I truly believe that God had a hand in that, because it was something that both my husband and I were praying for, to soften their hearts and help them to understand, and they did. And it's been huge for her emotional health, and huge for those relationships. And she has good relationships with them now. And it's because they made the choice to support her and honor her and respect her as Chloe. On graduation night, Chloe walked across the stage in what she wanted to wear. her name, Chloe Elizabeth, was on the diploma. Chloe was on the screen, and she was announced as Chloe Braddock, the graduate. So she got to graduate as who she really is. I didn't start out trying to help other parents or trying to advocate necessarily. As I was open about my story, as I was open about being a parent of a transgender child and doing so in a loving and accepting way, parents reached out to me. And that's how I started to help other parents, is that there was a need there. I recognized that there was a need. And I also needed it. I needed community and that support, and knowing that I wasn't alone. And so I started to meet with other parents, meet for lunch, met some amazing parents along the way. And some of these parents we have started with Liz McDonald, we've started a quarterly parent night where we have a dinner and usually a speaker, but we also just talk. And it's a place where we feel that safe community with other parents who are going through similar experiences and who understand. I have another lunch group that I've started with Monica Phillips with parents that are specifically of transgender or gender identity kids. And we meet monthly, and it's just to support each other. Getting involved in advancing LGBTQ equality and policy work started by meeting Michael Soto at one of these parent groups. He had been invited to come speak and share his story. And he had talked about some of the things that he was doing, and that really intrigued me. And I asked, okay, do you need help? How can I be involved? Because I wanted to do more. And then a little bit later, he asked me if I would speak in front of the Arizona State Legislature in sharing my story. And because they were considering some LGBTQ legislation for equal rights and housing and employment and so forth for LGBTQ people in Arizona, and that would be a statewide legislation, which is really important. And so I immediately said yes, and then said, ooh, wait, that's scary. But I wanted to do it. And so I spoke in front of the legislature. I shared my story, and I shared what was important to me and what I knew what was important to Chloe. And that was a great experience. And sometimes this advocacy work can be a little bit scary. You're putting yourself out there, but it's how things get done. The city of Chandler did not have any laws on the books that prevented discrimination against LGBTQ people in housing, employment, public accommodations. And that was hard for me because I have a transgender child, and when she came out, she was working, and it would have been completely legal for that employer to fire her just because of being transgender. And to me, that's just appalling. I knew that was not a law, and I wanted it to be, and I had been thinking, what can I do? How can I get this changed? And so sharing my story I knew would be helpful. So I did that in front of the Chandler City Council. My child lives with fear every day. She knows she could be turned away from a job in Chandler simply because she's transgender. She could also be turned away from her apartment or a public space just for being transgender. She lives in this fear because she knows transgender people locally who have faced these kinds of discriminations. She knows transgender people who have had difficulty finding jobs, or if they do get a job, they face discrimination and harassment until it's no longer a safe place to work. She knows a transgender woman who was told to leave a restaurant because they don't serve people like her. This was a local restaurant not too long ago. These aren't special rights that we're asking for, just equal rights that the rest of us already have. I am a religious person. I'm committed to my religious faith, which teaches me to treat others as I want to be treated. This ordinance is a win-win.
It continues to provide the freedoms, including freedom of religion, that are cornerstones of our Constitution, and it treats my daughter as we all want to be treated. So I'm asking you to please vote yes. Help LGBTQ people in Chandler, especially my transgender daughter, live life with less fear and more hope.
And having that law in the books just gives a little bit more protection and security to Chloe and people like her and all LGBTQ people, that this is really a great place to live. I was invited by Michael and the Equality and Fairness Coalition and the amazing people at One Community to travel with them to Washington, D.C. and meet with federal legislators there, as well as members of the White House staff, and just basically to share my story. The same thing that I did in front of the state legislature, and talk about why this federal legislation that would give rights to LGBTQ people, the basic rights that I take for granted, that Chloe didn't have and doesn't have nationwide. It was a really impactful experience. Meeting with people who did not already support this legislation, and watching the needle move in their hearts because of our personal stories and why it was impactful to us. We met with members of the White House staff, and one of them was moved to tears because she was so moved that here are parents who are religious parents, parents of faith, that are supporting their LGBTQ kids. And I could tell it was something that maybe she didn't see very often and wants to see more often, and I agree with her. We should see it more often. Most people think that people of faith don't also support LGBTQ protections, but we do. And that's what we showed them in Washington, is that we do. And there's a lot of us that do. And we're trying to get our voices out there and show that we want these protections passed in the state, in our cities, and nationally. Having members of Congress hear from people of faith who support LGBTQ civil rights, and also the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints officially and publicly come out in support of these civil rights, we know that had a direct impact in the passage of the Respect for Marriage Act. This was the first LGBTQ civil rights bill that was passed into law in the United States, and that's pretty historic. And it's cool to think that I had a part in that. This award, when I first heard that I was getting it, I was surprised and quite humbled. There's a lot of people who do really great things out there. I'm not the only one. And there's a lot of people who do more than I do. And this award is for everybody. It's for all the people that are doing amazing things, that are advocating to make life better for Chloe, to make life better for our family, to make life better for all LGBTQ people, and just make this a better place, a true community in which we live. This is for everybody who's doing things every single day, no matter how small it is, that's making a difference.